Hello, Cole.
Yeah.
How you doing? It's Michael Perch from Adelaide.
G'day, mate. How you going?
I'm very, very well. Yourself?
Good, good. Good to hear from you.
Indeed. Thank you so much for getting back to me all toing and froing. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all.
Okay, we're ready to roll?
Yeah, so you're recording this and then you play it at a later date or something called...
Yeah, that's right. I'll go through and edit it up and throw in some tunes and then post it up. So this one will go up Sunday week.
Oh, beautiful, yeah, because Jimmy Dawes' wife was asking me about it. I told her that I was doing it, and I spoke to Chris Brown and guys, and they were asking about when it was going to go. So Sunday week, yeah. What time? It'll just be on the net, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I'll drop you a link on your email so you know when it's alive and you can go from there.
Fantastic, mate.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for giving me some of your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh no, I appreciate it. You know, I'm happy to talk about Ayers Rock or any of that period. It was a very exciting time.
Well, I was only a young teenager. And my first recollections of Ayers Rock, mate, are I remember getting up early on a weekend and putting on the TV, and Sunbury was on TV.
Oh yeah.
And seeing you guys, and it was early in the morning too. You must have been just about first cab off the rank.
Yeah, we probably would have been. Yeah, yep.
But I remember that well when I'm a drummer and Mark Kennedy just grabbed me and just blew me away. Like I said, I was only probably 12 years old,
wow.
And and the band just, I guess the band was so different to the pop music that was around then. It just really grabbed me.
Yeah, well, it was a sort of mixture, I guess, of different elements and people from different backgrounds of that. But you're right, Mark Kennedy was, and still is one of the world's great drummers, I think. You know, he's just outstanding. He still plays great.
And so do you have fond memories of that gig at Sunbury?
Yeah, well, that clip, there's a couple of clips actually there's one on YouTube and there'll be another one on there soon, which there's one of Lady Montego and there's one of the tune I wrote, Big Red Rock, which was the title for the first album we did. So that clip will be on as well pretty soon. Yeah, fantastic. It was great times, very exciting.
Excellent. I shall go digging for that, see if I can find them.
Yeah, if you go, you'll find one on there, and there's one just about to be uploaded, so it should be there on the next week. But if you go onto my site, you'll find there's one on there. There's one on my website that's already there. That's the one, the Sunbury in 1974.
Okay, fantastic. And your website is absolutely brilliant. Did you put that together?
Well, the guy that put it together for me was a guy called Giorgio Elzini. He did the latest album I'd sort of done, latest jazz album. He's a graphic guy and, fantastic. He did a really lovely job of it. Very happy with it. Put all the photos and all the clips and audio clips and video clips and everything. It was fantastic. Took a while. Took about a year to sort of finish, but eventually it got done,
I can imagine. There's lots of really good stuff on there. It really is good.
Oh, great.
And I suppose from an outsider like me, look, especially as a kid watching something like Sunbury, we think like you guys, could hang around for the whole festival and take it all in, but that probably wasn't the case, was it? Were you in, do your work and out to the next gig?
Yeah, pretty much. You come in and you're busy. In those days, there was a hell of a lot of work around for all sorts of bands in Melbourne and Sydney, and it was the heyday, I suppose, if you want, with the 70s and the 80s to a lesser degree, but then the 70s were phenomenal all over the world for recording and studio work and everything. And so we were working all the time. We were working, sometimes every night of the week around Melbourne. We'd do all the venues, Martinis and the Station Hotel, and then we did the big venues like Dallas Brooks Hall and other places, but we worked all around the pubs and did the circuit, and it was fantastic. And then we travelled, and of course we went overseas. We were under contract to Mushroom in Melbourne, and they signed us up locally there. And anyway, so Michael Gudinski, who you probably know, of course.
You do, yes.
Yeah, well, Michael had a whole lot of people on his label at that time, and they're sort of on to do great things like the Little River Band and Skyhawks, Daddy Cool, I think Men at Work and AC/DC and a whole bunch of other guys. Anyway, he always considered us a little bit progressive, and so I don't know if he was really into what we were doing, but you know, he knew we were a good band, so he signed us. Anyway, he went over to the States and to A&M to try and flog some of his wares. So he went over there with a armful of his you know, artists who were on his label, and he rang us very excited one night and sort of said, "You're not going to believe this, you know, A&M liked your album." We went, "Well, yeah, we hoped they would, you know." I think Michael was a little surprised because he thought they might go for some of the other guys, which they didn't at that time, and it wasn't until later that those bands started to break into the States. But we were his first act to go in there, and certainly the first to sign up to a international record company, you know.
Yeah, well, I guess Mushroom Records was sort of the soundtrack to my teenage years. Everything they seemed to, and they didn't like Ayers Rock was a classic example that they didn't really go with the mainstream sort of pop music that was around at the time, and that was in hindsight, some of the stuff was just groundbreaking stuff, and it's really good that happened.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. So I think Kaninsky was pretty sort of surprised when A&M went for it, because he thought they'd go for the more commercial stuff or whatever of the other acts, and there were very good ones, you know, but I guess we were progressive. There was a lot of different influences from the people that have been in it, jazz influences and rock influences, and you know, all the experience that guys like Duncan Maguire and Mark Kennedy had in King Harvest and bands before it. So it was interesting, you know. I mean, I was in England actually when I got the call from Jimmy Doyle, and he called me and he said, "Look, mate, I've got this idea for this band, you know, I want to put it together and blah, 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 and we're working together at the moment, but, you know, would you like to come over?" And I thought, well, yeah, you know, I've got to get back to Australia eventually, so I flew down to Melbourne, and then joined the band then, and then the name Ayers Rock actually was after, like, when I joined, you know, it was almost just then that Jimmy decided to call the band Ayers Rock. He sort of was the discoverer, or, you know, the founder of the name of the group.
I was going to ask you about that, because it's just a fantastic play on words.
Well, Jim Doyle, unfortunately, he was, you know, my best friend, and I still have such good, fond memories of the times we spent together, and we were good friends right up until the time that he passed away 2 years ago. And of course, Duncan Maguire, the bass player, he's been gone quite a long time now. I think I couldn't guess, but it has to be somewhere between 15 and 18 years ago. So it's amazing that it's that long back. But when you think about it, Ayers Rock is 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I guess I first, apart from the Sunbury, I guess it was Lady Montego that caught my ear.
Yeah, that was one of Duncan's compositions, and I think that was one of the most popular pieces. You know, everyone used to love that piece. You know, it was just, we'd get requests for it all the time, and we'd always play it on almost every gig, you know. And he was a terrific musician, Duncan, too, you know, an excellent sound engineer, and just an all-round very, very good bass player, you know, just held it all down in the rhythm section. Him and Mark Kennedy were marvellous, and then we had Chris Brown, of course, on vocals and guitar, and so him and Jimmy Doyle, they just played so well together, completely different styles. But, you know, they just really worked in, so it was just a good combination, I think.
Yeah, sure. And you just mentioned there the sound quality of the band. I pulled out my battered old vinyl of Big Red Rock some couple of years ago, and was very happy to find that a CD was available. And the sound of it is just fantastic. It sounds so crisp and clear.
Well, that one was recorded in 1974 at Armstrong Studios in Melbourne. And it was recorded live in front of a studio audience. So it was mainly a lot of our mates and, you know, invited guests and things. But it was, I can't remember, it wasn't a big lot of people, but probably, you know, 30 to 50 people maybe in the studio. And so we did it all. We did it like a concert. So we did a concert for our friends, and some of the people who followed the band around. And it was recorded live, just recorded. We didn't do anything. We did no overdubs. We did nothing. And so it was amazing. It was like the smallest budget album ever, Didn't cost Gudinski anything for that one. The next one we did was the Beyond album, which we did in Los Angeles, and that was we got signed on the strength of the Big Red Rock album, and then A&M signed us up and gave us a huge budget in those days. It was $60,000, which was it doesn't sound an awful lot now, but it would be, even for anyone now to get $60,000 to do something wouldn't be bad. But in those days, $60,000 was an awful lot of money 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. When you take that back to 1975, yeah.
Oh yeah, and so we were able to use a huge big string section. So I got a chance to arrange that album for the strings and that sort of stuff. So the second album is a little different to the first one, but they're both. I like them both, but I guess a lot of people like the first one. I've got a few students that study saxophone with me, and a few guys that really grew up listening to the first album, and they like that one better than the second one. So there you go. So
well, I guess similar for me. The first one was the one that really caught my ear.
Yeah. I think there's something special about it. I think the second one is a very, very good recording, and there's some good pieces on it, and it's different. It's like comparing apples and oranges a bit, but I think the first one just was a really working band. We were working a lot at that stage. We just went into the studio and bang, away we went. And it was, fantastic. Just really, really just come off. All the stuff was great. And as I said, we didn't fix anything or overdub anything. Everything was just done live. It was almost like a live album. I think that's the difference. When you get in a studio to do a studio album, sometimes, you've got to play it a little safe, but we didn't with that. We treated it as, we thought, well, we'll just record it and see what happens, and as it is, everything turned out good.
Oh, and it's you can really hear that in the recording. It's got a life of its own. It really it doesn't sound like a live recording at all, but it's got a live feel of a studio album, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it does. It's got that. I think we just went for it. We didn't too much fuss. We set up like we did at a gig, and then everything was just like that. We weren't sort of really partitioned off that much like you do in studios, and you go in separate rooms and all this sort of stuff. There's a lot of that, so you can get the clean separation of studio sound. Well, this was more or less like everyone was close together, and we just played as a band, and that was it. But it was a terrific job. I think that Armstrong Studios were. Are they still there? Are they still in Melbourne? I'm not sure. I don't really know. You're in Adelaide, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
But they were the main studio down there at that time. I'm not sure if they're still around, but it was a very good recording.
Indeed it is, yeah. And like I said, the CD has just come up a treat.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I've got it, so I thought I'd better drag them out when you call me, just in case you ask me questions, because I'll have to look on the CD. It's been a long time since, naturally things that far back, you never hear them a lot of times. So you don't hear them for years, and then, you stick a track on, so a lot of this stuff I haven't heard myself for quite a while.
I'm glad I inspired you to go back and get them out again then.
I'll get them out and have a listen now.
And one of the really interesting things I found on going back and listening to them is how different the tunes by Duncan were to the tunes that you penned, for instance. Yours are very lengthy and lots of intricate arrangement in them, but his tunes are more rocky and poppy. But that seemed to work really well to give it a sort of balance.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, on the first one, there's a real variety of tunes, and the title for the first one, Big Red Rock, of course, is about the Ayers Rock. It's about. Funny enough, I've never been to Ayers Rock myself. I've flown over it.
Is that right?
From the ground, but I haven't walked on it. But I hope to do that one of these days, and I've got pretty close to it. I've been to Alice Springs down down there. We've done gigs and stuff there, but never actually got out to the rock. But I'd love to go. But so what used to happen? I was friends with Jim Doyle for years before Ayers Rock started. We were good mates, and we played in a lot of different situations. And so Jim was a very unique guitarist. He had a sort of very unique style. I'd say he's one of the most natural musicians I've ever met. And he could make some great didgeridoo sounds with his wah pedal. So he used to do it, and and I'd start listening to this thing, and I thought, geez, this sounds great. I wonder if we can incorporate this into some sort of rock music and combine it and see if we could do it. So that's where the inspiration come for the first the title track, which is Big Red Rock. So when you hear it, it's very Ayers Rock, didgeridoo, Aboriginal sort of influences.
Yeah, and yes, I totally agree. And
we used all the sticks, the Aboriginal sticks that the guys clicked together and those sort of things. And then so that transferred on and went on to the next album, Beyond. And Beyond was, I guess, I suppose, what I was trying to sort of do with that title anyway was just to try and envision what would happen for Indigenous people, further down the track, and it's nice to see that that's happened.
Well, like the intro to Big Red,
recognised that that they have now been recognised, and they have got the opportunity to do things that weren't happening years back.
Well, I wonder how much certainly the first part of Big Red Rock, like you say, I wonder how much that's influenced a lot of things that have come in the past. Like I listened to that and the flute part you're playing, and like you say, the didgeridoo sound effect with the wah pedal. Yeah. It's very sort of Xavier Rudd type stuff, way before he was even born.
I don't know. What happened when I heard Jim, we'd be rehearsing around, and then he'd start doing this didgeridoo sound, and I'd have him play it again, and then I started thinking about it. I did a bit of research with Aboriginal music. You can buy a lot of it on albums and all that. So I started listening to it to try and figure out how we could incorporate it, because we're from Australia, and they're the first Australians, that's for sure, and they're the real ones. And so that was to try and put that together to make something a little different. So it sort of carried through a little bit into the second album. And that was on the Beyond track. So that's got those influences, although we didn't use the pedal, but there were the sticks, the clap sticks that they use, and a few other sounds and different drums and things that we did. But of course it was recorded in America, that one.
Yeah, and I certainly don't recall hearing anything like that for many years after coming out of Australia from anybody.
Well, I mean, I don't know, there's been Aboriginal acts, of course, have done it since, with their own music, and so at the time I don't think there was anything particularly like that I was aware of anyway.
No, that's right.
But it was good. But I think the combination of Chris Brown and Jim Doyle on guitars and Mark Kennedy, who was an absolutely phenomenal drummer, and Duncan Maguire and myself, it was just sort of clicked. It just worked. I don't know what it was, but as soon as we got together, we knew it was going to happen. It just felt right. Everything we did was right. We'd rehearse, and these different things would happen, and the arrangements would change as we go through, and it was great times, great fun. It's probably one of the best periods of my musical career anyway.
And I guess you touched on it then, Cole, was something that really stands out for me is Jim's guitar playing, but the way that you played the saxophone, the interplay between you guys was just phenomenal, and you were even playing a lot of saxophone parts that were sort of working with the rhythm section.
Yeah. Well, as I said, Jim and myself have worked together in other bands before, and we always had a mutual admiration society going for each other's playing and each other's music. And so when he called me, in England. I said, "You want to come?" I just said yes straight away, and went there, and then that's how it started off. But yeah, we did a lot of playing together too after Ayers Rock. Well, Ayers Rock actually finished, 78, 79 or something. The band actually disbanded, but Jim and myself did a lot of other work. The Ayers Rock actually kept going as another lineup. I don't know if you're aware of that. There's an album called Hot Spell.
I'm aware of it, but I haven't actually heard it.
No, it was a different lineup of guys, and so it wasn't the original band, but Jim kept the band going for a while. But then later on we worked together in different groups, and we played with Georgie Fame. I don't know if you know him.
Oh, yeah.
Georgie Fame came out and did, I think he did about 10 or 12 tours of Australia, and Jimmy did most of those. And so we got a chance to play together, and Jim had his own radio show, Michael, too.
Oh, okay. Out of Sydney?
He had one in Sydney in Chatswood on 99.7 FM, and it was called In the Deep. And it was fantastic. And so I went on that. It was funny. I should say I haven't heard these for years, but it was a few years back that I went on his show, and we played a lot of the Ayers Rock stuff and spoke about it, as well as the Georgie Fame stuff we did. And we just used to reminisce about old times and have a few laughs about some of the stuff we did.
Fantastic.
Like the Crazy Boys tune.
That was on my list to talk to you about. The intro for that is Something Out of the Box, mate.
Well, that was funny. There's a story behind that, and how that all started. That Jim and myself, as I mentioned, had worked in different bands before, and sometimes we'd come up through Sydney at Central Station there, and right in the middle of Central Station, they had this hamburger joint that was run by these Greek guys. And we used to go there after gigs, either together or separately from other gigs. But sometimes we'd go there together, and we'd go there, and the guys were, really friendly, lovely guys, and they, "Hey, boys, listen, what do you want tonight? What are you going to have, mate?" And we'd say, "Give us some fish and chips." So it went on, and then Jim started making up things like, the guys would ask him what he wanted, and Jim would say, "How about a nice big glass of fish and chips?" All this stuff. So all this silly stuff. So this went on, and the guys actually started calling us the Crazy Boys because they reckon we were a bit mad. So after that, the inspiration for the tune come, and then we started doing the dialogue on stage, of course. We started doing it as a bit of a joke, and people started requesting it. We'd have people coming up and saying, "Oh, mate, can you do that one where you guys, do the Greek, Dr. Hop on top of stuff and all that?" So it became a big, it became a big number that people would request just to hear the dialogue at the beginning. But it was pretty mad.
And I guess that's really an interesting thing too. That what do you call it? The sort of the sense of humour of the band when you most bands playing the intricate sort of stuff that you were playing were very serious, but you guys seem to be able to pull that off, but have a lot of fun doing it at the same time.
Yeah, we did. We had a load of fun. It was funny when at Sunbury once we had this guy that used to follow us around. He was a friend of ours, and he was a real fan of the band, and he's become a good friend. His name was Mark Morris, and anyway, we decided we did a gig. I think it was Sunbury. We did it, and we decided to get him out to come out on stage with like a hot dog stand, because we couldn't do a hamburger one. But so we got him. We hired a hot dog, one of those hot dog metal, warmers or whatever it is that you put the hot dogs in. The guys have the hot dogs in. So he come with his chef's hat on and come up on the stage, and we're doing the introduction. He's wheeling this thing across the stage. Poor bugger fell off the stage and broke his ankle. But it was funny at the time. It wasn't really funny, but it was just a crack up. He come across, and we were going to do the Crazy Boys intro, and then he fell off we all run down to see what happened to him, but it was okay. He sort of sprained his ankle, but that was quite funny.
So did the audience think it was all part of it?
Yeah, absolutely hilarious fun with that. that piece, and it goes pretty crazy in the middle of it, as you probably know if you've heard it. It's we were using a lot of electronic gear. All of us were amplified. I mean, guitars are always amplified, but the saxophone I had wah-wah pedals and ring modulators and echo plexes and all this stuff, the crazy stuff that we had these days. And so in the solos in that piece, you can hear all the effects, and there's some pretty wild ones. But we had some great fun.
Well, that's a lot of experimental stuff you were doing with that really hadn't been done before.
Well, not so much in that way. We were influenced by a few bands as well. We did on the Big Red Rock album. There's a tune by the Weather Report band called Boogie Woogie Waltz, which was written by the pianist Joe Zawinul. Now, Joe Zawinul was a jazz musician and played with Cannonball Adderley, and then he went on to form the Weather Report group and had guys like Jaco Pastorius in it and Wayne Shorter and all. So we were into listening to that sort of music as well. So there was a bit of a cross-section of tastes that all of us had, and all of us listened to pretty diverse, wide. I mean, Jim Dore was, for example, was a really blues guitarist. Absolutely, I think one of the best I've heard, and he had such a beautiful sound. He was really a blues player, and that was his specialty. But he loved all sorts of stuff. He would listen. His taste in music was very, very broad. He loved a lot of jazz guitarists, and not many people know that, like Herb Ellis and these different people that he used to listen to when he was younger. But then of course, he listened to Jimi Hendrix, and he had a lot of that sort of influence with the wah-wah pedal stuff. But we weren't just into one thing. I think that's what the blend of the band was. The experience that we'd had in various different types of bands.
And that's very evident from the mix of sort of styles that Ayers Rock played. And Boogie Woogie Waltz, as you mentioned, was a great example. As I said, I was probably 12 or 13, and from there I went.
Michael.
but that tune in particular got me sort of off on a tangent to listen to things like Weather Report, where I wouldn't have actually even come into my consciousness, wouldn't have even known who they were. So it really had an influence, I think, on guys like myself in Australia that we wouldn't have heard that sort of stuff.
No, well, generally with a lot of pop or rock music, you don't get a lot of improvisation. But in our band, we stretched out, and the tunes go for a long time. I mean, I don't know how long some of the pieces were, but they're pretty long, some of them. And when we were on stage live, well, they go on for ages. Play 20 minutes on one tune or something. But you don't find that so much in the pop and rock field. There's less improvisation. It's more arrangements and routine. And because we basically did a lot of instrumental music and vocal music, then we mixed it up. Some of our tunes were short, like the tunes like Lady Montego, Talking About You, and Get Out to the Country. They weren't awfully long, but things like Big Red Rock and Boogie Woogie Waltz and Crazy Boys and things like those sort of titles on that album were quite extended, blowing sections where we would stretch out, and once we got going, it was hard to stop us.
A great example of that is the Stones tune you used to play, Gimme Shelter. The version of that survived on record is just phenomenal.
Yeah. But I mean, we just did a whole batch of stuff, and so I'd sort of come from a pop sort of background, as most of us did at that time, and then I went into sort of jazz. Listening to jazz. I always liked jazz, and it was always like my first love, really. And then, so I guess that part of it, I brought that element with me into the group. But then we had the really strong rock influence from a lot of the other guys. So I think it was just the balance of the fusion of whatever we could make up between us. That, somebody would come up with an idea, and then somebody would say, "Oh, well, what about if we do this?" And as far as the drums went, I didn't ever write any music Mark Kennedy. He never needed it. A lot of the other lines for the tunes were actually written out. I'd write them out, and then, you know, the guys would learn them or whatever. And Chris Brown was a very good reader. He could read music, but Doyle didn't read music very much, but he just picked it up by ear, you know. So we'd sort of play the line, and then he'd pick it up, and then but with Mark Kennedy, he would just, you know, it just fit in. He'd just play something that you could never dream up, and it would just be marvellous. I mean, he's one of the most creative drummers I've worked with, and, you know, one of the best I've played with, I think.
No, I have to agree that he's a phenomenal drummer.
He's phenomenal. He's so creative, and he's a drummer's drummer. All the drummers love him. They all did. We had a lot of, you know, guys, people come to gigs and fans and stuff come to gigs, and, you know, there were always drummers right down the front. They always get a bunch of, most of the bands would, you know, attract all these women. We'd have all these guys there, you know. There'll be drummers and a lot of other musicians. It was a bit of a musician's band, you know. The musos used to come and watch us, and even some of the jazz guys in Sydney used to come and watch the band. So it got an audience of hardened rock fans as well as jazz fans. So it was a very, very creative period.
And I guess, like you say, it was such a diverse sound and a diverse influences you had. And I was trying to think of another band that was even closer. And the only one I can sort of come up with was Steve Winwood and Jim Capaldi's band Traffic was sort of maybe a bit similar.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Well, see, there was a lot of influences in there, influences that I probably wouldn't have been aware of, because even though we listened, we didn't really listen to the same music exactly. You know, it's like anyone. You know, you listen to your stuff, and somebody, you know, your wife listens to something else, and your friends listen to this. So the band had heard, you know, I'd heard things that perhaps they hadn't heard, and they'd heard things that I hadn't heard. So sometimes when something would happen, you may not be aware of where it was from. So I think you know, with music, it doesn't matter what you listen to, there'll be an influence from somewhere. You know, we don't just invent it ourselves, unfortunately. I wish we could take the credit for it, but it's been going for thousands of years, and, you know, through the classical music and then the blues and, you know, in America, and then into the rhythm and blues, and then into the rock, and, you know, so-and-so, and then it goes on and on and on, and reggae and everything else. So it evolves over a period of years and years and years, and so one type of music gets influenced by something else, and when that happens, they call that fusion, and that's what we were. We were a fusion of various elements. Mm-hmm. There was a bit of country sort of stuff in there. I think Chris Brown liked country music, and so there was a lot of the influences of bands like the Eagles and things like that. And those sort of bands I hadn't heard really much of until I worked with Ayers Rock, and then they'd be playing something and say, geez, that sounds good, you know, it's a great feel. But I wouldn't have probably heard that unless, you know, I wouldn't have been influenced by that otherwise, and somebody turns you onto it and you go, yeah, that's great, that sounds great, you know. I like listening to any sort of music. I figure there's only two types of music, good and bad. You know?
Agreed.
And if it's played well, it doesn't matter what the style is, you can still enjoy it, no matter what it is. If it's got a good feel and it's got a good sound and it's in tune, and then you can really enjoy it no matter what it is.
So was it that's you mentioned the Eagles, and a band that I sort of popped into my head when you guys went to the States, that I thought, you know, they might pair you up with someone like Little Feat.
We played with various bands over there. We were on we did supports for various bands, and some of the bands that we work with that I can remember. But I mean, I wish I had the other guys here. I wish Jimmy was here, but he's gone now. But I wish he was here. He was like a walking encyclopedia. He used to remember everything. But we worked with, we did the support for Frank Zappa. We worked with bands overseas in the States like Status Quo and Bachman Turner Overdrive and Charlie Daniels, you know, the violence, yeah. Those were some of the bands that we were support for. So we did big concerts right throughout America, you know, sometimes up to, you know, 25,000, 30,000 people. and other venues were just little small venues, you know. So we did the whole circuit. We toured the States twice, and we were very well received, and people did like our music. I think it's like our actors, you know. We've got the greatest actors and actresses and that have come from this country, Kate Blanchett and you know, Mel Gibson and Russell Crowe and all these people. Well, they like us because we're different. You know, we have a sort of a raw element or something, and so the Americans really loved the Ayers Rock Band, and you know, it was just a pleasure to play to those audiences because they really could hear something a little different. We did sound different. We didn't exactly sound like them, you know.
Yeah, well, it's funny.
Attractive thing when you hear somebody with another accent or something. It's very unique and it's very appealing. And I think with us, our music was just different.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Frank Zappa because that's a sort of I would have paired you guys up. I would have thought you would have appealed to the same sort of audience in the States.
Yeah, well, you know, they put you know, when they put you on those circuits, you're very happy to be on them, no matter who's on there, because when you're playing with those sort of names, Charlie Daniels or Bachman Turner Overdrive or Frank Zappa or someone, Status Quo, you know, you're going to be guaranteed a crowd, that's for sure. So we were happy to be with anyone, and you know, we did a hell of a lot of different little, as I said, little venues, big ones, great big concerts. We did a terrific concert in Seattle, and there's some live stuff too, which is not available, but it's I've got it, but we've got some sort of rough tapes and things and you know, some CDs and stuff we did live, which is very good. I just hope that we can put it out one day. I don't know if we've ever got enough to put out an album, because some of it's okay and some of it's not. But it'd be nice to put out something of the live stuff.
Oh, it would be fantastic. Yeah, great.
Live stuff we did in the States, where we really pulled out all the stops there. We had to, because the professionalism and the excellence of bands that over there were just phenomenal. And so we really, you know, we were really serious when we were over there about playing. We wanted to make every concert, you know, like it was the last one, and it gave us a lot of energy, you know, to be playing to those sort of audiences, different audiences.
Indeed, I can tell that you look back on that time fondly, that it was something special.
Oh yeah, it really was, and the experience of working when we did the second album, the Beyond album, that was recorded at the record plant, and while we were there, Stevie Wonder was recording in the record plant in one of the other studios. So we went around and got to meet him, and it's coming out to Australia pretty soon, I believe.
That's right.
So that was just a real thrill to go and watch him. Actually, we watched him record a couple of bits, because he does most of it himself, you know. He just plays drums, and he, you know, plays the harmonica, and, you know, plays the keyboards, and plays all this stuff, and overdubs everything, and does the vocals and backings, and so he was just overdubbing stuff and doing stuff, and so we just got to meet him, and, you know, there was a real thrill to go and meet those sort of guys. Things you wouldn't get to do, I guess, if you're in Australia, and so they gave us the opportunity to do that, and also work in one of the top studios in America, which was the record plant, which everyone recorded there. It was a beautiful studio. We had a big budget. As I said, we had a big string section to add to what we were doing. You know, nice arrangements, and you know, it was just a real pleasure.
Yeah, and like you say, it was the studio in the States in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, and A&M was the record company that released the second album, and they were the largest independent record company in America at the time. And Herb Alpert from the Tijuana Brass, and he was involved in there. He was like partner, half partner with Bob Garcia, who was the other sort of big boss there. And so it was a real thrill to go over there and record and see how they did it. And, you know, they record so beautifully over there. Excellent recordings. I mean, we're right up there now. But in those days, they really were very far ahead, I think. the second album is a beautiful recording. Still stands up today, I think.
And I guess that's one of the great things about Beyond and Big Red Rock is they're very different. It's the same band and you can hear that, but they are very different albums, which is a really nice thing.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what you try and do with, when you're writing compositions, that you try and sort of do something different with each time you write something, and that's what we all wrote. Basically the three writers really were myself and Duncan Maguire and Chris Brown. So between the three of us, we wrote the bulk of the stuff. But the other guys contributed in many ways, and I don't think the arrangements would have come out the way they did, only for the people that are involved in that band, because they were able to make those compositions come to life. A composition is only just something that's in your head or it's written down on a bit of paper. It takes people to bring it out, bring out the expression in it, and bring it to life. And I think the music, speaks for itself with that, with the influence of all the players. It's got something about it that's very special.
Well, like you say, some 30 years on, it really does still sound as fresh and as great as it did back then.
Well, it's nice that you say that, and you were only a young kid when you first heard it, and it's great that you still think it's good, which is nice to hear.
If I can digress for just a moment, because as I was that age in the 70s, Skyhooks were a huge band in my life.
Yeah.
And the
great band.
And the title of my show was stolen from a Skyhooks tune.
Yeah.
But I also remember your name as a credit on Ego Is Not a Dirty Word as a session player.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I played with those guys. They're terrific guys, and also I worked in the studio with, I think on a couple of tracks with the Little River Band. I used to do a lot of studio work as well in Melbourne. We were based in Melbourne. We lived there. Was there for 3 years. So, when we were off the road, and, we'd say we didn't have any gigs or something or whatever, or even when we did have gigs, I was doing studio work. There was a hell of a lot of studio work back in the 70s, enormous amount. And so, you were busy all the time, whether you were working with the band or you were working with something else. So I was flat out most of the time, and I was doing arrangements and, doing studio work and doing gigs with Ayers Rock. So it was very busy time. I don't know if I could keep that I don't know if I could do that schedule now. I don't think I could. I'd fall over, but I was a bit younger then and able to sort of, go with a couple of hours sleep and rock up the next day to the studio and do something with other bands, which was great. And all the Mushroom guys, all the people with Mushroom, there was other bands too. I'm trying to think of the others. Matt Lake, Matt Taylor, do you remember?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So a lot of guys, I can't remember everyone, but there were a hell of a lot of people. It was a small concern then. It was run by, of course, Gadinsky, and Michael Evans was the other. Ray Evans. I'm sorry, Ray Evans was his partner, and Frank Stavala worked there as well. So it was a tiny little organisation, and of course, that's all history. Now it's, Michael Gadinsky's a very rich man.
and I guess for artists now, there is nothing like that around. Like Mushroom did it for artists in Melbourne in a similar way to Alberts did it in Sydney, and there isn't that sort of small family concern, especially in Australia anymore.
No, look, the whole thing's changed now. It's very, very different. I mean, I'm not sure how it works now because I haven't been under contract to any record companies for a long time, and the last two jazz albums I've done have just been to a small independent jazz labels. But it is different, and when we arrived in Los Angeles, we were an unknown band from Australia. It wasn't like somebody's going over there and it's Kylie Minogue or something, and you know who it is. They knew where we are, but in those days they picked you up in a stretch limo, and the limo was full of Foster's beer, and everything was first class, and you were treated like royalty. You'd have to beg to get a start like that now. it'd be extremely difficult to get in the door, you know.
Yeah.
In those days, the thing is, people, when I talk to, some of my friends or young students or whatever about what was happening years ago, they can't really believe what it was like, because no matter what idea you had, if you come up with an idea, somebody would be there with the money to let you go ahead with that idea. More or less, oh, look, we'd like to do this, oh, okay. And then, but the opportunities are harder now. I think it's much harder.
I think people aren't prepared to take the risks either.
Yeah, they're not prepared to take the risks, and it's hard to unless you're going to sell, millions of copies. It's very, very difficult now to get people to pay for albums. They won't. You've got to more or less put up your own money now to do something. A lot of times, and people do. In those days, people were throwing around money. There's a lot of money around. $60,000 in America in those days was nothing to those people. They just say, "Oh yeah, okay, come over and record. We'll fly you over, and you can do a tour of the whatever." And we were an unknown thing to them, but they liked what they heard, and that was it. So we were lucky, very fortunate to have been in that time. It would be pretty hard now, because there's a lot of bands around that never make it. There's a lot of guys that do it, but there's not that many that get through now. It's not like pretty hard.
Well, and also there isn't the work, unfortunately. Like you mentioned before, you could play 7 nights a week if you wanted. Especially in Australia, you cannot do that now, which is sad.
Yeah, it is hard now. It's almost as though you have to have some alternate way of making a living other than being a musician. Like I teach at the Sydney Conservatorium in the jazz department. I've been there for a long time, pretty much after Ayers Rock, 1979. I joined. Now, most of the staff there are really, world-renowned musicians, jazz musicians, but, they couldn't exist unless they were actually teaching.
Yeah.
You have to have a job, and then you're doing your gigs and, creative jazz gigs or whatever you want to do. They're the things that you do for love, you can't make huge money out of it. And so, you teach, and all my students teach, and everyone seems to teach these days. Either that, or you have a day gig, or you have a part-time recording studio that you can make money from. But it's very, very difficult just to be a musician now,
Yeah, well, and the jazz scene is a classic example. We really don't get much here in Adelaide. But for instance, every time that I get to Melbourne, I try and stick my head into Bennett's Lane, because we just don't have anything like that here.
No, it's a shame. I mean, Adelaide's always been a smaller scene, but there used to be some stuff happening years ago. I've been over there, and we used to play there, but I think Melbourne seems to be doing better than Sydney. This is what I hear. I hear that there's still a fair bit of live music going on there, and while there's a bit in Sydney, I mean, it's not like it was. There's a lot of jazz clubs that have closed down here. We had one called the Wine Bank, and that's gone, and then the Soup Plus, which was an established jazz club for years and years and years, it's gone. So, and there's nothing comes to replace them, really. So it's a tougher scene, but I do it because I love doing it, and I'm lucky that I've been able to make some money along the way, doing what I've wanted to do and doing what I love most.
And I just wanted to quickly touch on the couple of jazz albums you've had out in the last couple of years, Feel the Breeze and the Street. They're fantastic, mate.
Oh, thank you.
And it's I guess. And I'm not sure if it happens now, but I guess there is a lot of young jazz musicians there's some
terrific musicians now. It really, I think the standard of excellence of playing is probably one of the highest it's been, and there's just some terrific players. I just don't know what they're going to do. They work, but then I just don't know what the future holds for them. There's some terrific players working in music stores and things like that, which was unheard of once. Well, not that there's anything wrong, you shouldn't be ashamed of doing that, but I'm sure they'd sooner be doing their own music and, tours and travelling the world, but it's not that easy. They've got to pay the bills, so, they'll do whatever they have to. But there's some terrific musicians. It's just, I think the standard is very, very high now. Extremely high.
I think it's sort of, I guess you've just got to move out of Australia and make the most of the opportunities you have. Like, I know you've done some work with Vince Jones, who's, in my opinion, absolute genius. I love him.
Sorry, I missed it. Who is it?
With Vince Jones.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic.
So he's a classic example of a guy that is just world standard bar none. That really, there's not enough work in Australia for the guy.
What's he doing? I don't know.
I think he's working around Europe pretty much.
Yeah. A lot of people do. A lot of people go overseas and work overseas and then come back and, Australia's a hell of a lovely place to live. It's fantastic. We live a great lifestyle here, but it is very hard. It's something we don't. We put so much money into sport and all that sort of stuff. That it's music's sort of on the back burner, isn't it?
Well, Adelaide is. I'm slowly seeing a turnaround. It's and I guess a lot of the bands like we've mentioned are still out there in some shape or form. Yeah. And I guess people my age are now at a time where our lives are at a stage where we can actually go out to gigs again. So the audience is there, which is. Well, music, it sort of chooses you, doesn't it? You don't, it sort of grabs you. It certainly does.
And once it grabs you, you'll just do it anyway. That's the way I figure. Whether I get paid for it or not, I'll still keep enjoying it. It's nobody has to tell me to enjoy it. I certainly do, and I like listening to music, and I like hearing new things and hearing what's around, and just listening to music for what it is. It's all good. It's either good or bad. That's it. It's not the style. It's whether it's played well. I think that's the main thing. If you hear any type of music and it's played well, you can sit there and just enjoy the musicianship. Especially if being a musician yourself, you can really appreciate what it's taken to get to that stage. The dedication and the work, and there's a lot in it.
There's nothing more enjoyable than sitting in front of a musician of any description and just having your mouth open there. How is that guy doing that?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I get that feeling too when I listen to a lot of people. It's just a joy to hear other people play, and especially when they're at a very, very high level. It all looks very easy when you're sitting in the audience. But there's a lot of hard work behind, everything, and we just see the end product,
That's right. No, I don't want to keep you much longer. I've taken up a lot of your time, and I do really appreciate it.
I'm happy to talk to you, and, I hope you've got some good stuff there.
But one of the things that I did not know that some of the things you've done until I was getting ready to have a chat with you.
Yes.
Just the list of people that you have played with, Cole. I'll read out a few. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Natalie Cole, Shirley Bassey. That is just unbelievable. I don't know where to start. So how does a guy from Australia hook up with these people?
Well, you're working when you're working as a professional musician in the studio scene or the reading scene, you tend to get opportunities to do those sort of things. It was just a joy to work with people like that. It's just a dream, You grew up as a kid, watching Frank Sinatra or whatever in the movies and listening to. Well, I did anyway. Listen to Sammy Davis Jr. He was an incredible impressionist, Sammy Davis Jr. One of the greatest. He could do all the, any impressions of people and stuff, and as well as tap dance and great singer. And just to work with people like that, you're in awe of really their talent. They're just on another level, It's just really a joy. I've been very fortunate, I think.
It's a testament to your talent, Cole, that these people will seek you out.
Well, I've been lucky, I guess, at the right place at the right time, and that's what it's all about, I suppose. You get opportunity. I was lucky I was born in Australia, and not somewhere else where you'd be, have trouble even playing music, like some of the eastern countries and everything where it's even forbidden to play music. I just can't think of anything worse than that, being not able to listen to music. you know, being told that you can't listen to it even.
Yeah, it's those simple things we take for
Yeah,
granted.
it's pretty hard to understand how that works. I just don't know. I don't get that one, but anyway, that's another thing.
Well, thank you so much for having me to chat to me. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you, Col.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, Michael, and I'll look forward to checking on other shows of yours in the future. Thanks very much.
I've got so much, and I really want to edit this up and throw in some music so people, because I have a lot of people that listen to me from around the world, and I really want to throw in as much music as I can to give them a bit of taste of what we've been talking about.
Oh, that'd be great.
So what I may even chop this up into 2 shows, because we've been going nearly an hour, and I don't want to play.
I mean, see what you can fit in between everything. We mentioned a few things, you know, the Crazy Boys one, and I mentioned a few tracks. Maybe then you can stick some of those in, or whatever. I'm not sure. If you need to call me again, feel free. Just let me know. Give me a bit of advance notice if you feel like we haven't, you know, covered everything. I'll be happy to, you know, talk to you a bit more. Or if you want to, if you want to call me back with some titles and then just introduce them or whatever, that we could do that. I don't know how you piece it. I'm sure you piece it together great, but I'll just leave that to you.
Oh, yeah, no, fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, I could easily talk to you for another hour or 2.
So could I. It was great, and it's just great having a chat and you know, and talking about those days. And there's so many stories. I mean, there's so much that we could talk about really, and we covered half of it, or not even a quarter of it, I suppose, but I appreciate the time as well, you know.
Oh,
always good to talk about this music. It's pretty dear to my heart, this stuff.
Well, it's, you know, since I've been doing the show for about a year now, and I'm just amazed, especially from people overseas, what a love and a knowledge they have of Australian music from this period. It's absolutely mind-boggling.
Gee, that's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just knocked me out totally.
Oh.
And
you wouldn't know, you know. You just don't. You're not really aware of us, if they're aware of us or not. But you know, it's funny, you know. You find, you know, as I said, I've got a few students, and you know, they study with me and that at the conservatorium, because that's where I teach the saxophone, and in the jazz department. And you know, I'll get guys coming and say, "Oh, my dad had your Big Red Rock album or something," you know, and I grew up listening to it, and it's really a real thrill, you know, just to know that somebody was, you know, somebody's father was listening, and they passed it on to the son, and now the son has perhaps been inspired by that music. Who knows, to go and, you know, pursue it as a career or whatever. It's just amazing that you could have that effect on somebody, you know.
oh, that's one of the great things about music, indeed.
Yep, that's for sure.
Well, if you're ever down this part of the world, let me know, mate, and I would love to say hello.
Okay, mate, that's definitely, Michael. And so Sunday week, eh?
Yeah, I'll send you an email and let you know exactly when it goes up. Could I just ask you one more thing at the end?
Yeah, no, go for it.
If you could do a little tag for the start of the show for me.
Yep.
Something along the lines of, this is Cole Lofton and from Ayers Rock, and you're listening to Sitting in a Bar in Adelaide, or something to that effect.
Oh, okay, sitting in a bar.
In Adelaide.
In a bar in Adelaide, yeah. And just not mention your name, just say...
You can mention my name if you want, whatever takes your fancy.
Okay, well, hang on. Okay, oh, no, I'll just say it as you said. I think that's better. Just, you know, this is Cole Lofton from Ayers Rock, and we're sitting in a bar in Adelaide. Is that all right?
Sounds great.
Okay, I'll do it.
Go for your life.
This is Cole Lofton from Ayers Rock, and we're sitting in a bar from Adelaide with Michael.
Fantastic. Thank you, mate. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you, and all the best, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay, mate, definitely.
Have a great day. Thank you again.
I'll look forward to having a listen in.
I'll send it to you as soon as it's ready. Cheers.
Good on you, mate.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.